Welcome to the Nicky Hughes Show, the place where we unearth pure gold in everyday stories. I'm Nicky, your host, and each week I bring you compelling conversations with real people that inspire, inform, and connect. Whether we're diving into the dynamic world of business with business briefs, exploring the mindset of champions with sports shorts, or celebrating the unsung heroes in local legends, this is your space for powerful, impactful stories from remarkable individuals. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's get started. Julie Blowers, adventurer, digital nomad, mother of two.
Yep.
I would say you have the distinction of having sailed, or not sailed, but rowed a boat across the Atlantic. Goodness me, we've got a lot to talk about, but let me ask you this first question. Where on earth are you, if you are on earth at all? But I don't think you are you?
I'm not. No, I'm not on Earth. You're right. Hello. I'm on a boat at the moment at anchor, outside on a little island just off a little island called Lobos, which is in off the Lanzarote in the Canaries. And we anchored here last night. The weather's not been great here at the moment. And so it's a little bit of swell coming in, and it's quite windy actually. So, but it's meant to settle down. So we're gonna take the anchor up, and we're gonna head over to another anchorage in Fuerteventura later.
Very nice. And
after this call.
Awesome. And so for those watching on YouTube, you can see that you've got a basket swaying on top of you there. I think
the fruit basket.
It's a fruit basket. Okay, yeah. Great. And so if you see the picture moving a little bit, you haven't had too many drinks. You're not drunk. It's actually the fact that you're sitting on a boat at anchor, and that's leading to this. So if it's, I hope it's not disorientating anybody that's watching. But we can hear you perfectly and see you perfectly, and I'm absolutely dying to know about your surroundings. Tell me about your boat for a start. Who's on it? So, what kind of craft is she? Is she a racing boat, or is she a pleasure cruiser, or what is it? And tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so she's a cruising boat, and she's 38 foot, a westerly, so a 1990 build, so quite an old build, but a solid build. And she's got two berths, one saloon, one galley, one chart table, and it's basically it's me and my husband Paul who spend most of our time on here. So it's kept in Lanzarote at the moment. We sailed it from the UK gradually over time down to here. So I did UK to France, and we did France across the Biscay to northern Spain to Portugal, and then Paul did Portugal to the Canaries. I wasn't able to do that bit. I was a bit busy with the row. And then the plan is to and we go back and forth to England and to here. So we come over here for a short period of time, do some work, and then head back to the UK and just move around really. And then the plan is to sail it across the Atlantic at some point when ready. We're just preparing it really.
Goodness me, I could ask you 500 questions about this. When you said that you progressively sailed it from the UK, so when did you leave the UK?
I can't remember the exact time, but I'm going to say it was about 2.5 years ago. And we've gradually been moving it, and then you spend maybe a year in Portugal, or a year, like 6 months in northern Spain, and just work your way down. And the reason for doing that really is because we both still work. So, we've not upsticked and retired and sailed off into the sunset. So we're balancing work, children, and trying to sort of fulfill our dream as to sailing around the world at some point. So we don't know in which order we'll do it yet, but that's the plan. So
you're taking it as it comes.
And why wait? If you wait till you retire, or technically retire, whenever that might be, whatever that looks like, it may not happen. So we're still you know, we're still young enough, fit enough to do all this. So it's better to do it now, but do it in chunks than it is to just wait. So
Yeah.
that's the.
So the decision to embark on this journey, how long did that take, and what did that look like in terms of a process?
Well, that was driven by Paul, I would say, really. Although, so he's had a desire to. He's a professional sailor, and he has a desire to sail around the world and explore. Then, and obviously, I've got the same genes in that regard. So we just started to plan. The first step was to go from the UK to France, to Cherbourg, and just leave the boat there for a season and then bring it back. And then it kind of developed from there, really. It's like, well, why stop at Cherbourg? Why not go back to Cherbourg and then move from there to northern Spain? So we've missed out a lot of Europe by jumping from port to port, if you like. So going from Spain, going from France to Brittany, and then Brittany to northern Spain, and so on. We've missed out a lot, but we can come back and do that when we're a bit older. So the idea
when you
is
say
to keep going further afield.
Yeah, when you say Paul is a professional sailor, what does that mean? Is he a Navy man, or what is he?
No, he's not. He's a racing tactician on boats. So so he's been doing that. He's been racing since he was 6 or 8 or something in boats, and so he does that. He used to do that for a living. He now tinkers with it on the side when he's needed, mainly in the Solent, but sometimes further afield in Antigua, and so he has a passion for boats, racing and cruising. Whereas I do less of the racing. He's the qualified one, and then in that regard, and then now we're doing a bit of cruising, but juggling work, and you know, we've got 5 boys between us. He's got 3, I've got 2, and so we're just juggling life and work and play, trying to do it all in one go.
Great. And just going back to the racing tactician piece, I lived in New Zealand for a long time, and I had exposure to the America's Cup. So is that the kind of thing, is it the Volvo around the world and the America's Cup? Is that the type of activity that Paul was involved in?
Yeah, he hasn't. I don't believe he's taken part in those races, but he has done some high-profile races. So he's done the Australia 2s, and then he gets involved in what's called a Cape program and quarter tonners. He's a double world champion Etchells, and so he gets involved in all sorts of programs, really. And he's considered to be an expert on the Solent in particular, in the Isle of Wight, Southampton area. So he's often called on to be tactician in that neck of the woods.
So the Solent is excuse my ignorance, but the Solent is an area, is it, or is it a race?
Yes. No, the Solent is an area. So it's a big piece of water between the Isle of Wight and the mainland. So it spreads really the whole of the Isle of Wight, which is really kind of Christchurch Bay, right down to Portsmouth, Chichester, that kind of area. So and he's classed as a sort of a local guru in that area.
Yeah, I remember being hugely inspired by the Ellen MacArthur story, and that's kind of the area where she kind of learned her trade as well, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely, it is. Yeah, it's a hard patch of water to learn on. You know, they say that if you can sail successfully there and race successfully there, you can race almost anywhere in the world. So it's the most tricky. It's a tricky area. There are others, obviously, but it's one of the most tricky areas.
Yeah, those involved in the sailing world in Ireland will remember with horror the Fastnet race. What year was it? Was it 1978 when, or maybe it was later, when the huge disaster happened? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. No, Paul will know, but I don't. No.
Yeah, if I'm correct, I think there were 15 sailors lost in that particular race. So it's a dangerous sport, but
it can be.
Yeah, back to you and your life on board. And for many people listening, this is the ultimate dream. It's absolutely my ultimate dream. And I guess one of the things that's stopping me is that I think it's important to have two people who are equally as interested in sailing around the world as each other. So if you've got one person
Yes.
who's interested and one person that's not interested, well, then you're in a bit of trouble. So what is it like on your boat? Are both people as interested and as fascinated and as absolutely fixated with sailing as the other?
Yes, yeah, I would say so, yes. Paul's the one with the massive skill set in terms of sailing. So he kind of teaches me really. And I mean I've got my certificates. I've done a fair amount of sailing myself. But he's the expert. So but we both share the same passion. I think that's the main thing. To just sail wherever we can, really, and enjoy life and try and we're in a fortunate position that we can actually work while we follow our dreams. So I know not everybody's in that position, so we don't forget that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I am going to ask you about work in a second, but
Yeah.
forgive me for noticing
Okay.
a wine bottle in the background. I'm
Oh.
really interested to know. So, what was for dinner last night? Where was dinner? And did you have anybody else involved in dinner last night?
It was just Paul and I last night having dinner, and we had dinner at Anchor, just off this island. It's called the Island of Wolves, just off of Lanzarote. I believe the rule is that after 5 p.m. you are not supposed to go onto the island. I think there's something like 5 inhabitants, or there's a story behind it. I don't know the story, unfortunately. So we had dinner at Anchor on board last night. We had pork stroganoff with rice, and we had a tapas board to start. Ooh. Which was lovely. We eat and cope really well on the boat, which is amazing. And of course we did have some wine. But that's left over from last night, that wine.
Oh, that's impressive. I'm impressed that you didn't.
Yeah. There are bananas there too. So
just for show, yeah.
Yeah. And did you know you have to keep bananas away from other fruit?
You probably know I didn't know that. Why is that?
Yeah. Because they will ripen other fruits. So you don't put bananas in the same bowl as other fruits. So they'll ripen them really quickly.
Yeah. So in terms of the provisions on board, you obviously get your provisions wherever you stop. So if you're based in a port for a long time, obviously that's fine. Yeah. So if you're heading off, say you're heading off today to your next port, so how many days or weeks provisions will you need to stock up for?
Okay, so at the moment we're just cruising around, exploring sort of Lanzarote and the islands around it. So we'll look at the weather, decide how long we think we might want to anchor for, and then we'll provision accordingly. So this time I only provisioned for about 3 days. So 3 nights, three lunches, breakfast, and then we've got a dinghy attached to the boat, so we'll go ashore and stock up. But if we were provisioning for something like a Bay of Biscay crossing or the Atlantic crossing, I mean the Biscay is sort of 5 days, maybe a week, you'd always provision a bit more than you need, and then the Atlantic maybe 3 weeks, so we'll probably provision for 5 or 6 weeks for the Atlantic in case of a problem. But buying provisions in the Caribbean is really expensive. Their supermarkets are stocked with Waitrose stock. And you can pay $8 for some butter or something. It's crazy prices. So we will stock the boat. We've numbered all the lockers, and all the lockers will have different provisions in them. So we'll stock the boat as much as possible before we go on a trip. So
if you're crossing the Atlantic 3 weeks, you're only bringing enough fruit and bananas for a few days. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. You can only do fresh fish fresh food, fish, meat for so long. and then we would move on to tinned tuna and tinned sweet corn and things like that. We've also got dried food, so you've got cereals and things like that. But we can be quite we'll also freeze food, so we'll make 3 days of food that's frozen, and put it in the bottom of the fridge, and that will last us. We'll probably still be going on fresh food for nearly a week, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Maybe a big Iberian sort of a ham on or something. Maybe it might swing here. I don't know.
Sounds delicious. Sounds absolutely delicious.
We do well. Provisioning is my thing, so we eat well.
So that's your role. Are your roles and responsibilities very
Yes.
clearly identified on the board? So who are you, the
They
skipper,
are.
or is Paul the skipper?
No, Paul's the skipper on this boat. I'm definitely in charge of the galley. So
Okay.
I'm in charge of provisioning. No, he's the skipper for sure.
And in moments of key decision making, obviously the skipper makes the decision and hands out that decision to the crew.
Yes.
What's that like, taking direction from the skipper when he's your husband and when you live together and work together? Does that take a little bit of getting used to, or is that easy for you?
It does take a bit of getting used to. Some days it's very, very calm and it's all fine. And then other days when decisions need to be made really, really quickly and a real sharp decision, then the voice will get raised. So I'm having to learn how to deal with that, really. So this morning, for example, we moved the boat slightly because there were some fishing boats coming in, so we needed to lift the anchor and move the boat. So I'm turning the boat, he's on the anchor, I'm on the wheel, and I'm on full lock left, because I know we've got to swing quickly to the left. And what I can't see is a big rock in the we're only in like 5 meters. I can't see a big rock that he can see. So he screams at me from the bow to go hard left. Of course, I'm already going hard left, not because I can see the rock, just because I know that's what I've got to do. So I got a little bit agitated at that because I was already doing it, but of course he doesn't know that I'm already doing it. And I don't know that the rock that he can see. So sometimes I think we just need to talk a little bit quieter. But he needs to know I can hear him, and vice versa. So but it does take a bit of getting used to. And so we're still working on it.
Yeah, so it sounds like clarity of communication is the number one objective, isn't it?
It is. And what I think euphoria is to get to the point where you almost know what each other's thinking and somehow communicate without too much voice, which we're getting to. So we have got a system on anchor when we're anchoring where it will be hand signals. So that's neutral, or you'll go left or right or forward. So we have got hand signals. So if there's lots of people around, we'll try and do hand signals because everybody watches. So everybody sat with their gin and tonics watching you anchor or watching you come into a marina. It's like it's a big sport for them. So the least amount of words, the better. I think is probably the way forward. But in the race world, they'll barely speak. They just know what's coming next, and they'll do things ever so quietly because they don't want other boats to hear.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But also they're obviously operating in very extreme weather conditions as well, and you can't hear the human voice. So you have to be able to be in sync with each other, don't you?
Yeah, that can happen if it's particularly windy. Sometimes you can't hear each other, and also if Paul's on the anchor and he gives me an instruction, he needs to know I've heard it. So we're getting to the point where we're trusting each other to know that we've done what's been asked. But he has a right as skipper to question me and check that I've done things, and that does take a bit of getting used to, for sure.
Yeah. Your ultimate objective is to sail fully around the world, you said.
Yes. I don't know we don't know which route yet and how that will happen and when. But that is the ultimate objective. I think it largely depends on work and commitments, and we've got the same challenges anyone's got, really. We've got family challenges. My father's not too well at the moment, and you never know what's around the corner. So the plan is to do that, but it's not set in stone yet, that plan.
Yeah. And how do you stay in touch with everybody? How do you stay in touch with work? How do you stay in touch with your family? How do you stay in touch with the kids?
Yeah. So we've got Starlink on the boat, which is Starlink Mini, it's called. It's the new one, and that gives us an incredible amount of data. And assuming the boat and the Starlink device is pointing in the right direction, it can be absolutely crystal clear. So we have challenges when both of us need to be on a video call at the same time, but we just need to manage that, really. Other than that, it's the usual FaceTime, WhatsApp calls, data packages. We've got unlimited data packages. So when you've got land around you, then it's less of a problem. It's absolutely fine. When you're offshore, then you're totally reliant on the Starlink. And so what we will do is manage when we each work. So we'll be doing shift work as well. So when we sail across the Atlantic, we'll be doing shift work, and we'll be doing sort of 4 hours, maybe 4 hours on, 4 hours off. So we won't be using the data at the same time. So it's just being smart with it. So yeah, so we have calls with our family, and we're also going back to the UK frequently at the moment. We haven't set off yet fully. So
okay. So when you say frequently, are you talking every quarter or every couple of weeks or every couple of months?
No, every couple of months. We try to come to the boat at least once a month. So really, we're here for 2 weeks now, but sometimes we might only come over 3 or 4 days. Occasionally Paul will come for a bit longer. He'll come for 3 or 4 weeks. So we just keep it lively, mix it up.
Lovely, lovely. Are we incidentally talking on Starlink now?
We are, yeah.
Okay. The reception is really good, yeah.
Yes, yeah, we are.
And this is not an advert for Starlink, by the way, in case anybody's wondering.
No, but the Starlink Mini is without a doubt the best at the moment. It's working for us. So when I did the row, we didn't use Starlink. I wish I had. We used BGAN, and I think it's called Insamat. And I didn't find it so good. So,
okay.
Yeah.
What do you both do for work? You talked about it quite a bit, and I know how you manage your work life on board.
Yes.
Do you have an office back home? Do you work from home back home, or how does that all work?
So I have an office back home. I'm a financial advisor. I've got my own company called Ebb and Flow Wealth, and I have staff and an office. And I have about 230 clients, around about that I manage. I do all areas of financial advice. So and the beauty of that is, and since COVID, not everybody needs to see you face to face anymore, or not everybody wants to see you face to face. So the regulations on how I look after my clients have loosened up slightly, let's say, since COVID. So people are quite happy with telephone reviews, email. I can do video reviews, Zoom, Teams, etc. And then obviously you've still got some that need a face-to-face meeting. So whilst I'm still doing my job, that's why we go back and forth to the UK. And then similarly with Paul, he's a managing director of an IT firm, actually, that are based in Poland and the UK. So he travels from Poland to the UK. He works in London. He has an office in London. And then obviously he works on board. So he's fortunate as well. I think we've just got like a natural path in life, which is very similar. So we can both work anywhere.
Yeah, great. When it comes to financial advice, I have come across a lot of financial advisors over the years, and I'm really keen to know and to understand it a little bit better. Are you providing financial advice because you are particularly good at managing finances? Or when it comes to financial managers, does it mean that you're selling a suite of products which are provided by yourselves or by larger companies? What are the motivations for you to
Yeah.
become a financial manager, and how does it work in reality?
Okay, well, like a lot, I would say a lot of financial advisors, it's not a job that you go, oh, I know what I'm going to do when I'm young. It you tend to fall into it, and I fell into it. And I started my life being in financial services, doing compliance and audit and complaints handling and checking advisors' works for big corporation. Then I had the boys. I had 2 sons, and then after 3 years, I went to work and set up my own company as a financial advisor. So I work under the umbrella of St James's Place, who I'm really happy with, and so they're like the middleman between me and the regulator. So they do all the compliance and the admin, and they provide the products. I see my job as a financial advisor to be the person that sets somebody up and puts their money and their savings in the right boxes, because let's face it, a pension's a pension wherever you work, an ISA's an ISA wherever you work. Death cover is death cover. So they're all the same products. It doesn't matter where you operate from. So I see my job as to make sure that everybody's got in life a suite of products that suits their needs. So I'm a bit more of I would say I'm more of a money coach. I am a qualified financial advisor, but I concentrate a bit more on the money coaching. So the money coaching and also sort of meeting goals and needs. It all sounds a bit cliche, really, but it's more about cash flow planning and forecasting. And where do you want to be in 20 years' time? What does your retirement look like? How much money do you want to leave to your kids? Do you want to leave any? And so I'm more interested in using people's tax allowances, obviously, because there aren't many left. So use them where we can. But I'm more interested in kind of, where do you want to be? And so someone will come to me with, let's say, a pot of money or a pension, and I like to tell them I'm involved. I'm interested in the investment side of things, but which is crucial. But I actually like to be able to tell them, well, look, you can spend X amount a year, and you still won't run out of money by the time you're 99. So I like the cash flow planning really more than anything else, because I think that's more meaningful than, you've got a 20,000 ISA allowance. Have you used it? We obviously have to tick those boxes. But I like the idea of helping somebody kind of live their life as they want to live it. Because what happens is there's a tipping point in people's lives where they start to almost get scared to spend money. And I see this a lot. And, I spend a lot of my time saying, spend your money. Do not let the tax man get your money. Inheritance tax planning is a hot topic at the moment. So spend it. Obviously, if you're in a luxurious position where you've got it, but people start to kind of hoard it as they get older, and they get a little bit frightened of doing that.
Yeah.
So,
what advice would you give, say, a person or a couple in their early 30s who come to you and say, Julie, I and we want to buy a boat and sail around the world when we're 50. We don't have anything right now, nothing at all. All we have are 2 jobs. Normal paying jobs.
It's got to be usual. The basics, use your ISA allowance. If interest rates are high, pick some high interest save. It's got to be save. It has to be. So what you do is you work out roughly what you think that might cost you at that point in time, so 20 years on, and use the magic of compounding. So I would suggest a mix of and this is fluid, by the way, because things change. But I would say a mix of cash savings, stocks and shares savings, but work backwards. Work out what you think is going to cost you, and then ask a financial advisor how much you're going to have to save in order to reach that goal. And just don't stop. You might have to make some shortcuts in your life for the next 20 years in order to get to where you want to go, but just don't stop focusing on that goal.
Yeah.
And use your age to your advantage. I mean, again, very cliche, but the younger you start, the magic of compounding has a huge effect.
What do you mean by that now?
So it's interest on interest, because you've got all those years to accumulate interest on interest.
Yeah.
Whereas if you start saving when you're 50, you haven't got as long for it to accumulate and grow. So
let's look at the numbers here. So say I've got £1,000, right? And I put £1,000 wherever in a reasonably yielding account somewhere.
Yeah.
What can I expect to make on that £1,000 this year?
Well, that depends on whether we're talking cash or stocks and shares.
Just cash.
Well, cash is coming down, obviously, but at the moment there are accounts out there offering kind of 4%-5%. You get better deals depending on where you are. Sometimes you get good deals because you're an existing client. Things like that. So if you could get anywhere between 4 and 5%. There are some ones out there that if you save regularly, they'll offer you more, etc. But for a lump sum, you'd be looking at about that at the moment.
Right. So I'm obviously using a very spurious example. So that's £50 I'm going to make this year.
Yeah.
And then next year I'll earn the interest on 1,050.
Okay, I see what you mean for the compounding. Yes, so exactly. So it'll be 1,050, and then it'll be 5% on that, and then so on. And you can see that if you do that when you're very young, then that's going to have a much bigger effect in the future than if you start doing it when you're 60. So that's not to say you shouldn't use your tax allowances when you're older as well. You definitely should. But my advice to a couple in their 30s who've got a particular goal in mind in their 50s is work out what it's going to cost them, work backwards from there.
What's the number one most difficult challenge that you have as a financial advisor?
It's always going to be the turning. I'm going to say it's the press. So I think it's these, we call them ambulance chasing firms, who promise people the earth, and that there's always a project on the go, isn't there? Have you been misadvised? Have you been missold? Are you being looked after? That I would say is probably the biggest challenge in whoever you work for, because there's these I call them, it's an American culture of ambulance chasing, and they offer to try and get you some compensation back, and it just disrupts the market. It disrupts all the good work that we do, and it's just a noise. And yes, there are people, unfortunately, out there that haven't been given the best advice or haven't been looked after. That doesn't apply to me and my clients. So it's for me, it's just noise. So that's a difficult one. And then they go and take a fee. And then in some cases, so in some companies, they're taking fees that are unbelievably high.
Yeah.
And actually, I won't name names, but there's one company that's taking fees that are actually illegal and higher than they should be taking, which is ironic considering they're trying to promote people to complain about fees, and then they go and take an extortionate fee off of a client. So so I'm seeing that. Don't get me started. But
I'd love to get you started on that one. That sounds great.
So that's the biggest distraction. We're trying to do a good job here, and it unfortunately there is a hangover of let's say poor or misleading advice from the 80s, 90s, and modern advisors are paying the price for that.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm seeing that you have to be almost a counselor as well. You need to
yeah,
coach and counsel and mentor your clients to a block out that noise, but also to show them that there are all of these
yeah.
spurious actors in the financial chain, and you just need to be aware of them, and then just be careful not to go down the wrong road, right?
Yeah, it is, and I like the money coaching side of things, and that's one of the things I'm going to alter. I do less of the money coaching. I do more of the financial advice, but actually, I'm seeing more value in the money coaching, and I frequently have to turn clients away, potential clients away, because it's they may not be in a position to be able to set up certain products, but they need help. And it's sometimes quite hard to deal with that, because if I can't sort of set them up with a pension or an ISA or a bond or whatever it is, the product, um, it's difficult. So now we can do money coaching, which is not regulated. So it's almost like another string to your bow. So you're not selling a regulated product, that because they're not in a position to have one, or it doesn't fit. So instead of turning them away, we're now doing money coaching, um, that will help them, and they'll pay a much smaller fee as a result, because they're not really getting financial advice. They're just getting a bit of guidance, and where to look, the tools to use, the things to think about, the things that hurdles, pit stops. And I'm really enjoying that. That's a new thing that I've started doing,
Yeah.
because actually not everybody is in that position where they need it. You know.
Yeah. I asked about the number one challenging thing for your industry,
Yeah.
and then I was going to ask, what's the number one rewarding thing? And it sounds like your coaching is the number one rewarding piece, is it?
Yeah.
Or is there something else
It,
that
it
gives you great satisfaction there?
it's the coaching, and it's also the cash flow forecasting side of the job, which is basically seeing somebody get to where they want to get to, and go off and live their dream, whatever that may be. Whether it's saving money to buy a deposit on a house for the youngsters, or people who've saved enough to go and do that cruise they wanted to do, or sail around the world, or whatever. It's seeing people get to where they want to do, and going, do you know what? I'm actually quite comfortable in retirement, and I've been doing this for 7 years. So I'm now starting to see the benefits of my advice for
Yeah.
from people. I won't see all of those, particularly the youngsters, but I get a lot of joy seeing the youngsters save. Um, because when you do a pension quote for a youngster, um, the numbers are seven figures because of
Yeah.
this compounding. So and their eyes light up when they see it, and not they don't all get it, but I've got quite a large chunk that do. You
Yeah.
know,
So the
so
message
that
is start early and have a good
yeah.
structure to it. Right.
Yeah, well, my son, my eldest son, who's 22, has just bought his first home as a result of me pushing them to save from a very, very young age. And he saved enough to buy his first home. So,
Oh, wow,
and
that's
he's
amazing.
22.
Yeah.
Amazing.
In today's environment, that's really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you get satisfaction out of that, really, and seeing somebody comfortable when they start retiring or get their first home, or and there's also the very challenging side of the job, which is life cover. When unfortunately when somebody gets diagnosed with a critical illness, it's not great news. Nobody wants that. But if I can then help them out by saying, you remember you've got this policy here, and it's going to pay your mortgage off, or it's going to give you X amount of money, that brings an element of positivity to somebody's life at that point. So so it's excuse me, it's the outcomes really that I enjoy. The
Yeah.
day-to-day job itself is not particularly exciting.
Yeah. And just one last question that I'm interested in on the financial side. So let's say that couple wants to sail the boat around the world in their 50s, right?
Yeah.
obviously, or maybe not obviously, but I would assume that most people who do that will want to hang on to their family home. They'll want to be able to move back and forth from their family
Yeah.
home whenever. So let's say, and I don't need to know your figures, not even for a second, but let's say your monthly expenses living at home are X, right?
Okay.
Now, if I have a boat that's fully paid off and it's sitting in Fuerteventura at the moment, and we're currently sailing around the world over the course of 10 years, will my monthly expenses be 2x having the boat and sailing around the world, or is it just a little bit extra, if that makes sense? So what I'm trying to get at is
Yeah.
how much do I need to budget for? Do I need to budget for twice my monthly outgoings to have that boat to sail around the world, or is it just a little bit extra every month?
Okay, so the answer is going to be, I hate this, but it depends on whether you're going to spend your life at anchor or you're going to spend your life in a marina. So, or both.
What's the
Because if you
difference?
but the difference is if you spend your life in a marina, you have marina fees to pay for, which can be
Okay.
expensive. And the marina fees can be sort of anywhere between sort of £5,000 and £10,000 a year, I guess. So, but you can also do it really cheap. If you do your research, you can do those marina fees really cheaply. And typically, you don't spend all of the time in a marina. You'll be in a marina for a certain pocket of time. Then you'll go to anchor, or then sometimes you'll take the boat out and put it on what's called the hard, which is out of the water, to do some maintenance on it. And there are fees associated with that. So if you were anchor all the time and you left your boat at anchor all the time, your fees they're minimal. They're your living costs, so they're going to be significantly less.
Okay.
And then you just got to run the boat, so there'll be a bit of fuel. If you're running a sailing boat, it's a lot cheaper. So you'll just have fuel and provisions and a bit of maintenance when things go wrong. So it'd be cheaper.
Yeah.
But if
So
you're looking to live a marina life, then it's going to be sort of around the same as living at home.
yeah, because if you were living at home, you'd have to run your car, wouldn't you? And so you're going to have costs at home as well. So the answer is that it can be not that much more expensive to have a boat and sail it wherever you want, whenever you want. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. In some cases, a lot cheaper. But then don't forget, obviously, you've got to run your home as well. But then you can rent your home, and go off on your boat. So,
yeah, and you now don't have your kids living at home because one of them has just purchased his own home. So how do they feel about mum being off, traveling around the world and coming back and forth? Do they miss you, or are they at a stage now where it's just normal?
I think it's just normal for them. They've my eldest son is a Royal Marine. They don't miss anybody. So
They're desensitized.
They're desensitized. They're hard as nails. But they do. But he's obviously setting off on his life. He's got a new girlfriend. He's got a new house. He's a Royal Marine. He's off, and I hear less from him than I do my youngest son, Miles, who he's 20. He's 20. He's 21 very soon. You've interviewed him already, I believe.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah. So he I have more interaction with him at the moment than I do with Robert. But no, I think they're really pleased for me. Miles loves to travel, so he's got the same bug as me. He's always off working abroad. He's a bit of a digital nomad himself. So I think they're really pleased for me. I think they like it. And also, I've been a single parent since they were 1 and 3. And it's largely been me and them living at home together. So we spent an awful lot of time in each other's company. Many years of living in the same house together. So I think they recognise it's kind of time for me now. And I wouldn't leave them and go if I didn't feel it was the right time.
I remember speaking with Miles, and at the end of our discussion, I said, "Goodness me, Miles, you've got a terrific story and a great outlook on life." And he says, "You think my story's good? Wait till you meet my mum." and he said you were a firecracker, and he was right. So, so what was it like
Yeah.
growing up? You mentioned that you were a single mother. If I may ask, was that as a result of a bereavement, or were there different circumstances there? And what was it like trying to juggle kids? And you said you started your business when they were 1 and 3, I think you said.
I did, yeah. No, it wasn't a bereavement. It was a natural separation. We went through divorce, and their father's still very much around. He stayed local, and we did the classic every other weekend children swap and one day in the week. So they have I would say it's fair to say that I did the lion's share of the childcare, and I did the lion's share financially too. He paid his way, and he's very much a big part of their lives. More so, I think now they're adults than when they were children. Actually, I think he was a slightly older dad. He was 18 years older, and he'd already had 2 children. So I think he found having 2 more young children again harder than he imagined it to be. I think that would be a fair statement to make. So I set up my business when they were 1 and 3, when we went through separation, and I took a chance. I had a financial background. I'd been in corporates, and I really didn't want to do that. I wanted the flexibility with the childcare and the kids. So I basically went self-employed, and I started doing compliance contracts for local financial companies. And then eventually one of the directors of a local firm said to me, look, we've got a whole bunch of clients here that we don't have time to look after. Would you like them? So I then registered. I was already qualified, and I registered as a financial advisor, and I started life with these 20 clients, and interestingly, I've still got them now. And those 20 clients then mushroomed into 40, and I just kept going to them and saying, look, am I doing a good job for you? Yes or no? And if I am, can you refer me to 3 clients? And I guess I went a bit old school on the referral side of things. But that has mushroomed over, the last 20 years of being a financial advisor into 230 clients. And now I get people walking into my shop. I get referrals probably 2 or 3 times a month. And I don't like turning people away, but occasionally I have to, which is why I started this money coaching side of things, so that I don't really have to. So, and I'm now currently,
there's a pattern emerging here in my head, right? So that was a huge decision right there at that time when your youngest boy was 1 to get out and go on your own. You've also made another huge decision to go sail a boat around the world. So is your life punctuated by these huge decisions, and which one of them are working really well for you, and which of the decisions you've made are not working so well for you?
Okay, so the decision to effectively go self-employed and start from scratch worked really well for me at a young age. When the boys were a young age, I think it has taken its toll on me to a degree, because I've definitely spent more time with my head in my laptop than I have being as much of a mother as I perhaps wanted to be. I think I would rather have been far more focused on the children, but I think I did a really good job of juggling the 2. Everybody wants to be the perfect parent, don't they? But in these days, and particularly if you have a separation, you've got to juggle the 2. So I've probably done a bit too much work than I should have done, and I don't regret it, because I had to do what I had to do. I had to bring up the boys, but I think I've done a fairly good job of producing 2 very solid males, and they're both doing really well. So I can take some comfort from that. So that side of things was good. I feel it's the right time for me to now go off and explore with my husband. We only married last year. We've been there's another story, but we've been tinkering with that one for many years, on and off, and that in itself is a story, but we won't go there. It's all happy now. Um,
Yeah.
um, so it's a great sort of
Do,
fairy tale ending.
yeah. Do you subscribe to the notion, Julie, that the quality of your life today is a
Yes.
result of all of the decisions that you've made, good and bad,
Yeah.
leading up to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. You have to work hard for what you've got, and if you've got a dream, you've got to follow it. And I would say, so I have no regrets in anything that I've done, any big decisions I've made in my life. And if you've got a dream, you've got to do it. You've just got to work out a plan, on how to get from A to B, and surround yourself with the right people to help you make those decisions. I think I'm going through a phase at the moment where I'm wanting to sort of declutter my life a bit, really. And I'm very conscious that I've got a little bit too much in my life going on, too many strands. And if I could critique my own life, it would be that I need to declutter it a little bit, so that I have less to think about. So I don't have any regrets on any of the decisions I've made, and everything's going in the right direction for me. But I've worked hard.
Yeah. So what are the
You
things
know,
that are
I've
what are the
really
things
worked
that will
hard.
need to go in this decluttering phase?
The number of clothes I have, I've got too
Y-
many clothes.
Yeah, yeah. This is a
My,
fascinating one for me because
yeah.
I am obviously a very sharp dresser, but not. But I have on a couple of occasions in my life ditched my wardrobe completely, right down
Oh,
to the
that's my
clothes I was
dream.
wearing. And I must say, it was two of the most liberating experiences I've ever had in my life.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah,
so isn't it funny? So I get really frustrated that at home, so I can live on a boat, with virtually, but with very little. Obviously, it's very comfortable here, but it's very little. And I can live and survive really, really well. And the less you've got, the less choice you've got, and therefore all the decisions are easier. Um, but at home, I don't seem to be able to clear out my clutter and clothes. I've got a very tidy home, but every drawer, every wardrobe is full. And I have never been brave enough to get rid of it all and start again. Maybe that's what I should do.
yeah. Big
So
skip, big
that
skip
annoys
someday.
me. Yeah, I've got too many things around me, that I just don't need. And having just done the Atlantic row, which we'll come on to, I didn't need anything. So, I needed so little, and I survived. So what sailing and doing the Atlantic crossing has on the rowboat has shown me is that I really do have too much stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm aspiring to a lady, and forgive me, I've forgotten her name, but I'm aspiring to a lady at the moment on a podcast who sold everything in her house, everything in her life, apart from 5 boxes. Um, and I'm trying to pluck up the courage to be that brave.
Yeah,
So,
well, if I
um,
can offer you any support on that front, again, I've done it twice, and
have
it
you?
is truly liberating. It really is. I'm keen to know a couple of
Yeah,
things. Firstly, when you were going through these various phases of your life leading up to now, you talked about surrounding yourself with the right people. And I don't
yeah.
want to talk about your previous marriage, but did you find that as you moved on to a new phase, were there people in your life that you needed to shed, without being too
Yeah.
bold about that statement? Were they, were you very conscious of having the right people around you to help get you where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I wasn't at the time, I don't think. I think when I took the leap of faith to go self-employed, and and I also had quite a big mortgage at the time, I just took any advice that I could get, really. I wasn't picky on it, but I've become more picky on the people that you go to get advice, because otherwise it can just be too much noise, can't it? Too many people with lots of opinions. So I think as you get older and wiser, you do start to learn the people that really have got the solid advice. So I've got fewer people around me now, and you know, you take advice on all sorts of things. Paul's a huge influence in my life in terms of how he manages his life. It's a bit cutthroat how he manages his life, and actually that's taken its toll on us at times. But his life works well. Everything works well.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean that you actively stop communicating with certain people, or when you say it's cutthroat, what do you mean by that?
I have actually stopped communicating with some people. I've taken the view now that if people can take the trouble and time to reach out to me and ask me how I am, and contact me, then I will take the trouble and time to reach out to them. So there's been, I don't think there's been maybe an active decision, maybe one or two, but nothing major. But it's just people just fall away, don't they? And I think I think it's fair to say I used to worry about that a bit too much, and I used to worry what people thought, and so I've now taken a step back and gone, well, hold on a minute. If I don't hear from that person for a year, then they're clearly not thinking of me. So I just naturally they've just fallen away.
Yeah. These big decisions that you've made, big pivotal decisions in your life to go self-employed, to maybe end a relationship, to sail around the world, and ultimately you made a little time ago, you made the huge decision to, for me, which is the ultimate decision, is to row a boat across the Atlantic, which I can't wait to get into. All these big decisions, were they motivated by Julie to better herself, or were they motivated by Julie to get away from what she was doing, the life she was living, the person who she is, to try and become a better version of yourself? Or is it a combination of both?
I think it's probably the latter of what you said. Sorry, the middle one. I think it was to better myself. I married very young. I married at 21. And I always thought I'd write a book called Shepherd's Pie on a Saturday night, because I found myself on a Saturday evening cooking shepherd's pie for my new husband at 21. What on earth was I thinking? Now
that is fascinating.
I'm actually very, very friendly with my first husband. We get on really well, and he's a lovely guy. So it wasn't his fault, but I settled very young. I don't know. I'm not gonna blame my parents for that. But my parents married very young, lead a very traditional life, still together, thankfully, which is lovely to see. But I think I felt that when I was 21 or in my 20s, I didn't really have many aspirations. I didn't have any dreams and goals as to what I wanted to do. So I felt that that's what I had to do. So I just naturally fell into the same pattern that my parents did. And I spent my 20s and early 30s not really doing very much, if I'm honest. And then suddenly I just had a light bulb moment one day and went, what on earth am I doing? Cooking a shepherd's pie on a Saturday night. What's going on? And I now realise that I missed out on so much stuff in my 20s that I should have been out kite surfing and sailing and rowing, but I didn't. So I obviously didn't naturally have it in me, and it's developed. So it's your middle option, which is it's developed in me, and I've suddenly realised what I've missed out on, and that I don't need to follow in my parents' footsteps. I admire them for doing what they're doing, but that was almost like a cultural post-war hangover as to what people did in those days. And I thought, why on earth did I follow that route? I didn't go to uni, and I should have done. I ended up studying through work in the end, but it wasn't mentioned in our house, uni. It just wasn't a conversation.
Wasn't a thing, yeah.
I wasn't probably academically bright enough at the time, actually, then, but it just, so I've self-driven myself in my mid-30s onwards, really. So I took myself off when I was 40 on my birthday. I was single, And I thought, what do I really want to do in life? What am I missed out on? And I decided it was sailing. So I took myself off to do a sailing course in Lanzarote, funnily enough, here.
Yeah.
And that was the start of my journey of trying to better myself and get out there and do more.
And
So
that love of the water.
it
Yeah.
wasn't natural.
Yeah. Yeah. You made it happen. So that love
Yeah.
of the water eventually led to the ultimate adventure, which was sailing or rowing a boat across the Atlantic. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to grab my cup of tea here. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to let you go on that one. I can't wait to hear
Okay,
this.
let me just have a little cough. Excuse me. Right. Okay, so 3 years ago, let me go back 10 years ago, when I met my husband now. He took me on a holiday to Antigua. And I said earlier that he does super yacht. He does racing. He's a tactician for race boats of all sizes. He got asked to be a tactician on an 82-foot Oyster, which is a very well-known British boat. It's a cruising boat, actually, but this particular owner raced. And there was a regatta called his Super Yacht Regatta, and he took me there. And I was crew, he was tactician. And we've been doing that for 10 years in Antigua. And Antigua is home to Nelson's Dockyard, English Harbour. And that is the finish line for the Atlantic rowing race. And I've spent 10 years watching these ocean rowing boats come over the finish line. And it is unbelievable. It's spectacular to see. And every year I watched it, I used to get out of bed. We used to be in the super yacht on the boat asleep. And when you hear the horns go and you know that somebody's coming in, all hours of the day, all the horns go. There's a whole commotion going on in the harbour, people shouting and screaming. So I would get up and go to the bow of the boat, and you would get goosebumps watching these guys and girls coming across the finish line, whether it was solos, pairs, fours, fives,
And where do they start from?
Oh, they start from the Canary Islands, a little island called La Gomera.
Okay.
And they row 3,000 miles, and they end up in English Harbour. So the backstory is I've been watching this for 10 years, courtesy of my husband taking me, on these super yachts and doing this racing, which is fantastic. So I've been very fortunate to be exposed to it. And I'm also a rower. I've been rowing at Christchurch Rowing Club for 25 years, on and off. So I used to row when I didn't have the children, when they were with my father.
Okay.
And so combine the love of the ocean and watching the race and the rowing, I thought, well, hold on a minute, this is for me. And it just gradually grew and grew in me, really. And then 3 years ago, I was asked to join a team that was racing in 2022, and I was asked to be their reserve in a team called Raring to Row. And I immediately jumped at it and said, yes, I've always wanted to do this, of course I will. But then I quickly realized that it's actually really hard being a reserve in something so huge. You can't be a reserve because you have to train for it. You have to prepare for it. You have to prepare your work life, your children, your family life. You have to prepare everything around you for it, and you have to go all in and fundraise. And to be a reserve means you can only tiptoe around the edges. So that.
Sorry, just to cut it short there for a second. Being a reserve means that you're a substitute, so you only get on board if somebody pulls out. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah. And you cannot go all in and train and manage that as a reserve. It's really hard. I would never suggest anyone do that. So that then fell along the wayside. So then I thought, right, okay, I'm going to buy my own boat and set up my own team. So I looked for a boat for sale. There was a boat came up for sale in near Girona in Spain, Catalonia, and I went over there. I bought the boat. They then did the race. So what these boats do is the boat does the race, and then you put the boat up for sale just before it races, and then the next year's team buys the boat and does the race, and so on. Or you
okay.
can buy them new from Rannoch. You can buy a brand new boat and kit it out yourself, or you can buy a second-hand boat, which is what I did. So I bought the boat, which was a 4-stroke 5-man boat, and then I started to put the team together. But that took several attempts. You know, that was hard work. It took, I believe, it was about 3 attempts to put a team together. And that getting the right mix of people was the hardest part of the whole program. It takes about 2 years typically from the idea hatching to actually doing the row. Most rowing teams take about 2 years lead in, and
Describe the
that
boat
will be
for me. Yeah, sorry, Judy.
yeah.
Describe the boat for me just in a little bit more detail, because in your case, you're going to have 3 people on board. Is that right? And so what facilities do you need, and what does the boat look like, and what does it feel like to row and all that stuff?
Yeah, so the boats are long and thin. They're like a cigar, if you like. They have 3. They vary in length depending on how many people are on board. This was called a Rannoch 45, which is a 4-stroke 5-man boat, but you can row it with 3. So it has 3 rowing positions in the middle with 2 oars, so that it's level and equal, and they have a pod either end. The stern pod is the smaller one, and that has all the navigation equipment in it, and is almost like the technical end, the working end. And then the bow cabin is the longer, thinner one, and you can comfortably sleep 2 in that one. You can actually sleep 5 on board, so they're long and thin. They are very, very well designed. They're designed to catch the wind. So they're not like a normal rowing boat that's got no high sides. They've got high sides. They've got high. The cabins are high. You can probably share a photo of us on the boat in this. So, and they've got lots of storage on board. So they've got hatches for your food. They've got hatches for your safety equipment. And in terms of equipment, they are powered by solar. So they have a solar panel either end. You might have a portable roaming solar panel as well that you attach to the side for emergencies. You have a water maker on board, so you can make your own water, which is driven by solar. We have a manual water maker as well, which literally goes. So all of these, the powered one and the manual one, they all go into the sea. They suck out the seawater, and then they remove the salt from the seawater, and they convert it to drinking water. It's incredible.
Is it nice?
It's okay. The only thing you have to do is put the minerals back into the water. So we used to put a hydration tablet into our water to give, because it comes when you get the final product, it doesn't have any minerals and vitamins in it or anything. It's not treated. So it is nice. You wouldn't know. And if you put a bit of orange squash in it, you'd never know. So
wow.
So we make our own water. We have a jet boil on board, like a camping stove, that heats our water up in 90 seconds. And we eat rehydrated food. So it's dried food in packets, add water to it, and it pops back into a spaghetti bolognese, or whatever it is you want to eat. So we're totally self-sufficient. So the race is run by World's Toughest Row, and it's supported by them in terms of your shoreside safety, but it's an unassisted row. So you have to carry your own food, you have to make your own water, and you have to row. And you obviously have you have things like you'll have a chart plotter on board, you'll have wind instruments, you've got oars, you've got eight oars on board, and you've got sat phones, and you can have like we've got now, we're working now from Starlink, so you can have some kind of satellite system that gives you access to people at home and other boats. And the obvious one is you've got VHF, So you've got a VHF radio, so you can make contact with other boats that are passing. One of the biggest challenges in these boats, they're very low to the water, and the waves are almost always bigger than us, so we can't be seen. So we can be seen on what's called an AIS, which is a digital system, like almost like a radar type of system, GPS fed, and that will show another boat within a certain range, maybe maybe with a rowing boat, probably no more than 5 miles, that we are there. So they'll see us on the screen, but they can't physically see us. So what we had quite a lot on the row was we would call up another boat and go through the usual protocol of calling them up, tell them who we are and that we're an ocean rowing boat, and ask the obvious question, can you see us? And the answer always was, we can see you on the screen, but we can't actually see you. Where the hell are you? And then they realize you're a rowing boat, not a sailing boat, and therefore that's why they can't see your mast, because there isn't one. So then the penny drops for them, and they go, okay. And then you have to have the safety chat, which is, we're going on a bearing of 270. What's your bearing? It looks like you'll pass us on the port side, just to make you aware we are here. And then once you're satisfied that you're not going to have a collision and they've seen you, then you can have a little bit of chit chat. How you doing? What you're eating? Have you got any fresh apples?
Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah.
So what about a couple of housekeeping questions? You and I have talked before about our mutual love for a good strong coffee, right? So
yes.
What did you do for your morning coffee? Because allegedly, when you replace your morning coffee with green tea, you remove about 97% of the joy that's left in life. So
that's true.
Which is true. So what did you do for that? And then do you also have to shed any inhibitions around toileting and all of that stuff? How does all that work?
Yes, you do. So we ended up being, after the various team selections, we ended up settling on a team of 3. And you have to have those open conversations, and you have to do that in the UK when you're going through your training, really. So we all love coffee. So we had a jet boil coffee every morning. We tended to have a cup of tea in the middle of the night, and we may have another cup of tea towards sort of sunset. So yeah, typically we'd have 3 a day. And you enjoy them. You really, really enjoy them. That's like an absolute treat, because obviously there's no alcohol on board, but having that coffee or tea is an absolute treat. So we'd always
proper coffee.
Oh yeah, but we would have decent quality coffee bags, which is what we have on board here, actually. So they're pretty good. So there was no real instant coffee as such. We couldn't go to the luxury of crushing beans. We didn't have time for that. But but yeah, we did enjoy coffee and tea on board, which is nice. And then you have to shed all your inhibitions in terms of going to the toilet in front of each other. So there is no toilet on board. It's a bucket, and we have 3 buckets. One is for washing your clothes, one is for washing your body, and one is for your number 1s and number 2s. The good thing is that when the 2 are rowing and one is using the toilet, they're facing away from you, so you don't actually sit and look them in the eye.
Okay. Because it's on a boat, it's called heads, right?
On a boat, it's called the heads. Yeah, exactly. So our heads was a bucket in a recessed part of the boat, and then you hold on to the sides, because it's fairly stable, but not always, and you have to hold on with one hand, and you have to dress, because you always have to be holding on to the boat with one hand. You can't just stand like you would on a normal boat, because there's too much movement going on. So you have to undress with one hand, and then you have to sit down and dress with one hand, and go to the toilet with one hand.
Yeah.
So it's always a little bit awkward, but
Was it
hardest
three females on board?
No, it was we had a mixed crew. We had one male and two females.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
Sorry, the hardest part.
we had a mixed crew. But the hardest part was then getting rid of the toilet, because you've got to angle the bucket so that it doesn't collect so much water that you lose it, because the force, if it's rough or you're going 3 knots or something, the speed that the water goes into the bucket, we actually lost one day, so we were down to 2 buckets. So yeah, and then obviously we had a strict routine, and it was all very grown up, and everybody gives everybody their privacy, and everybody would clean, you clean the bucket and you leave it as you found it. Yeah, it was good. And obviously we had, Ed had a urine bottle with a lid on it, and we had a lovely contraptions called shiwis. So there were occasions where if you were locked in your cabin because there was a storm, then and it's unsafe to go out and go outside, then you'd have to go inside your cabin and use your shiwi.
Yeah.
So we did have two or three occasions where we had quite bad weather this year. It was the worst weather ever recorded for the row, where you're locked in your cabin for hours on end.
Right.
So you just
all three of you locked in the cabin, or is there always somebody out on board?
No, all 3 of us were locked in cabins on several occasions. So what we had is Ed in the stern cabin, because he was it was an obvious gender divide, and he had that cabin to himself, which was the smaller cabin, and then Sally and I shared the bow cabin, which is the larger cabin. And also the bow cabin had an area, a little small compartment where you could put your feet, so it meant that we could go to the toilet using our shiwis in that space, if you like, whereas a guy can actually just kneel up and do it into his bottle.
Yeah.
So it was a bit more difficult for us to do that. So it was an obvious choice for the decision as to who would sleep where. So the boat effectively runs itself. It's an unassisted row, and you've got everything on board you need to survive. In our case, 59 days at sea. 59 days, 5 hours.
So you set off from the island, which I can't remember the name of. I better write it down. What was it again?
La Gomera. It's a small Canary island.
Okay. So you set off to great fanfare, or just quietly sail out into the sunset?
Oh no, it's a great fanfare. So there was 33 boats, 100, I think it's 110 rowers, and you're all lined up together. So you've spent 2 weeks out in La Gomera preparing. So you've had various inspections. You've unpacked your boat down to every last nut and bolt, and then repacked it. So you know where everything is. You've got emergency grab bags, you've got spares bags, you've got food compartments, and toolkits, and obviously all your personal belongings like your clothes, and your sun creams and all that. So you go through all these inspections, 2 weeks with all the crews, and then on the day, and you have various safety briefings, and lots of talks and words of encouragement and stories and etc., and a bit of bonding with all the other crews. And then on the day of departure, they do make a big thing of it. All your families and friends fly out, and they do like a gun for everybody. So you have a 10 countdown. And they go in order. So they start with the largest crews, the 5s, and then they go 4s, 3s, 2s, and then solos. And then you all go out within 3 minutes of each other.
And how are you feeling at that time? At that moment, how are you feeling?
Oh, yeah, it's really anxious. Yeah, really anxious. You're kind of excited because the hard work that you've put in to prepare for it, to get to the start line, is really testing. It's testing on your home life, your work life, selecting the right crew members, getting all the preparation is huge. The fundraising is massive. And so there's an element of relief that here we are, we're actually going. but it is a very, very anxious time. My palms were sweating. We had tears before we went, obviously, because you're saying goodbye to your family and friends. But you do. I know Sally did too, and I think Ed probably did. We had a few tears amongst ourselves, the three of us, before we left, and we had a little pep talk with each other and said, "Come on, we need to stay friends. We need to make this work. We need to work hard. We need to stick to the routine." So we had a little talk with each other, sort of 10-15 minutes before we actually left. But I think there was a lot of nerves on board.
Yeah,
And things like
I'm even nervous imagining it as you tell the story.
yeah,
The funding, just really briefly, all self-funded and fundraised by the three
yep,
crew members and your wider team. Is that right?
yeah, absolutely. We raised about 93,000 in the end, and it's still growing now. Actually, we're still getting donations in um, when we do kind of like post-row talks. So we raised 93,000, and that effectively covered the cost of the campaign, and has left us with monies for charities as well. We haven't quite worked out how much is left for the charities yet, because we've still got a few minor repairs to make on the boat, because we've sold the boat now, and it's
Yeah.
now moved on to an Estonian team. So we're now just tidying the boat up. Once we get the final bills in, we'll know what's left. So yeah, that was hard work.
Very round figures. If we take the cost of the boat into account, all of the travel to and from the various locations, your
Yeah,
subsistence, all of that stuff, am I thinking somewhere between 150, 200,000 in total?
I would say, because we bought a second-hand boat, I would say our total cost is around the 120, 130 mark. But if you were to buy a new boat, it would be significantly higher. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a big old challenge in that regard. But you know what? It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, isn't it? It's just an amazing adventure that
Yeah.
that not everybody would get the opportunity to do. So we had to, and we were self-funded. Some of the military teams, there was military teams there. There was 4. Some of them are obviously that they're paid for, because it's kind of it's funded. It's promoting it's promoting the different military arms. So not all of them have to go through that. So but we raised every penny with about
Yeah.
37, 38 events that we did between us to raise that money, and that part of things was incredible. And some of that would be corporate sponsorship, some of that was family and friends, some of that was strangers, and some of it was products and services. So our kit was donated to us,
Yeah.
and there's lots of things, lots and lots of
It's
things.
necessary to go through that, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because I often experience in local sports teams or sports clubs, if they get a huge injection of cash from an angel donator, it's great for a short period of time. It's like a shot in the arm, and it keeps the club going, or it
yeah,
keeps the community going for a period of time. But what happens invariably is that the grassroots of the club, they actually lose interest in the fundraising aspect of the community, so they
yeah,
stop doing it, and then it's a very short term thing. Whereas if you have a very active team involved in raising the funds and going through the hard yards of funding
yeah.
this whole project yourself, it's a much more rewarding exercise and is much more sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a sense of pride as well that you've actually done that. It almost certainly came at a cost in some regards, but in terms of the impact it has on your life. But it's one hell of a challenge that you're taking on, and therefore you've got to expect to put that work in. Which we did successfully. So that start line day was a mixture of relief and I would say genuine fear, because when we left, we'd been told that there was a big storm brewing, and the storm, we left on a Thursday. We left a day earlier because they wanted to get us to go more south quicker, to get away from this storm that was brewing on the Sunday. So that first week was probably the most anxious week of all of the weeks, because everything we did was for the first time. obviously we'd done training in the UK, but it's completely different once you're out there. And that was really hard to get that, to get all the firsts done, to realize how safe the boat was, to realize that you can row in big waves. So that was a challenging week. And then obviously our first power anchor, where we have to put an anchor down, which is like a parachute, to hold you station while you're in a storm. So that was a grueling week for sure.
Yeah. So all the preparation that you do in terms of the roles and responsibilities of your crew members, when you get out onto the ocean and you're 20 days in, do all of those pre-planned roles and responsibilities go out the window, or do you stick rigidly to the plan? And how do you make sure that everybody's pulling their weight?
Yeah, we have a plan, and we had a daily routine. You have to have a routine, and you have to stick to that routine. And we stuck to that rigidly. One of the issues, and you've just touched on it really, is how do you know that everybody's pulling their weight to the same level and degree? And that became a bit of an issue on the boat, because how do you measure one person's 100% to another's? And that, funnily enough, that was a big sticking point for us on the boat. And because you'd have one team member saying, look, I'm giving it my all, I'm giving it 100%. And there's no doubt about it that they were giving 100%. And you could see that they were trying and giving 100%. But 100% for one person is a different bar to 100% on another person. So how do you argue with them and say, how do you say, well, I don't believe you are, when you can actually see that they are, but it's not the same as another team member? So that's a very difficult thing to measure. And we actually had that within our team. It's difficult to argue when you can see that somebody is giving it their all, but their all is a different bar. Their bar is lower.
So what do you do? I mean, you can't storm off into the next room and have a cry or have a big falling out. You've got to get on with each other. You've got to talk to each other. So what do you do? Do you just have it out on deck and get it over and done with, or do you have different methods?
You do have to have an open discussion on deck about anything that's going on that isn't going well, whether it's somebody's made a mistake that they didn't mean to make, or whether it's it's a genuine mistake, or it's a lack of knowledge or a lack of understanding, or perhaps they're having a bad day and they're not behaving the way they should behave, or they've got an injury of some kind. You have to have it out. You have to discuss it openly. And yes, you do sometimes go into your cabin and have a cry. And sometimes you have a cry on deck. That happened more towards the end of our trip, actually. Funnily enough, you have to crisis manage on board, and sometimes that I was the skipper on board, and we had to have a little bit of good cop, bad cop, and I had to have some very uncomfortable conversations on board. But if it gets you to the finish line, that's what matters. You've got to remember that any conversation is there to improve matters, and try and resolve any issues on board. And I would think it's fair to say that every team probably had their fair share of issues on board. You can't spend 59 days on a boat that small and not have some things that you have to deal with. So
take me to the lowest point of your journey. So you might be looking at the charts and there's a huge storm coming in. Your boat is starting to get very wayward. You're starting to lose control. Talk me through that moment when you're going, oh my God, what are we doing? And are we actually going to get out of here?
The lowest point is not the obvious thing. That a lot of people would assume the lowest points are when you're in a huge storm and you actually kind of fear for your own life and your life of your crewmates. These boats are incredibly safe, and as long as you follow the protocol and the procedures, and you're always strapped on, and you always shut the cabin doors, and you do all the right things that you've trained for, they are not the scariest moments. The lowest moments for us were when we felt that we try to achieve a certain number of miles a day, where as a team, we felt we'd done really well. We thought we'd rode hard. We thought we'd gone in the right direction. And we thought we'd made a lot of progress. And when we made the phone call to Paul, who was doing our weather routing, to get the good news as to just how well we'd done, to find out that we hadn't rode anywhere near as many miles as we thought we had. And that not only that, we've drifted by 25 degrees.
Oh.
And what on earth are you thinking? You know, what we've gone, no, we've been rowing at a bearing of 285. And he said, you might think you have, you might think it, but what you've actually done, because you've been going a lot slower than you thought you were going, you've drifted 25 degrees. So it's like a shopping trolley effect.
Yeah.
And anyone who sails with tide and wind will understand this element. You can be pointing in one direction, but you're actually going in another. So you're pointing at the vegetable aisle, but you're actually going to the meat. You know,
that must be just gutting, is it?
Yeah, it was. So we had a number of days where that happened to us, where, and there were some days where we knew we hadn't done well, but there were other days where we were convinced we'd done well, and we just hadn't. And the phone call that we had with Paul was a very uncomfortable one, because he'd say, listen, I'm trying to get you away from a storm. I'm trying to minimize the damage of any storm, or I'm trying to get you away from the doldrums. No wind, no wind, no waves, which is like rowing through treacle. So he would have an objective in mind, which is to give us the best route possible, to give us the most efficient and effective row using the elements. And then we would just go somewhere else. And he'd go, well, you've just rowed yourself into the doldrums. So those conversations, they were our low days.
And there's no nice way of telling you this. Is this one of those moments where Paul has to give it to you straight between the eyes? You talked about him being really rigid and regimented. This is one of those moments where he is devastatingly direct. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And that was difficult with the husband and wife team, because so we used to share the call around. So some days it was mainly me, but then some days it would be Sally, some days it would be Ed, and he would have to be very direct, and that was difficult as a husband and wife, because he was saying, are you delivering the right message to the team? And I go, yes, I am. Are you sure you are? And I would find it difficult to take, you know. And so occasionally I would say, would you mind speaking to Sally today? Or, you know, if one person on the boat was struggling, I would say, would you mind speaking to Ed today? You know, and so sometimes we'd mix the bad news around so that it wasn't all the skipper, it wasn't all me.
He has a really crucial role, Paul, doesn't he, in all of this, because he's almost like the communications manager as well.
Yes, he was. So we had 2 or 3 calls a day with Paul as our weather router, and then we also had to juggle the calls with Atlantic Campaigns, the organisers. So they would call us once every couple of days, and they would sort of give us their version of events as well. And they nearly always married up, but Paul's was far more detailed. So he would route us across. So our lowest points were when we had a call with Paul, which was, listen, you've got 24 hours to row 60 miles, because if you don't, this is what you're rowing into. So we would then go, oh my God, here we go. And then we'd all have to literally just go hell for leather to do the best we could. And often we succeeded. You know, he gave us a deadline and a bearing and a number of miles. Did it. But often we didn't. So, you know, sometimes we didn't, and they were our lowest days.
One would assume that the high point of your trip is actually sailing into dock on the other side.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assumption, or is that again incorrect?
Well, there's loads of highs, loads of lows, but obviously the finish is the biggest high. I mean, the feeling that you get. The preamble to that was, we watched about 150 miles out. We watched our family. I watched my husband, and then we watched Miles, my son, and then Sally's family and Sally's children fly over the top of us. That was a high. and we
Wonderful.
filmed it. We filmed them flying over the top of us, which is amazing. And we had a few tears then. Sally was crying, and I was comforting Sally, and then I went. She said, "Your Miles is on there." I went, "Oh my God, so he is!" And then I had tears. So that was good. But no, the biggest high is the finish line. I mean, I equate it to the joy that comes with your wedding day, or having it, having your children, the big things in life. The really, the successes, getting the job of your dreams, or whatever your highs are. The adrenaline that you get from that finish line was just unbelievable. So
This
yeah.
this sounds like a ridiculous question, but how deep did you have to dig through the course of that 59 days and 5 hours to reach your goals? I mean, were you always in control throughout those days, or were there times when you felt that, shit, I'm losing this a little bit here? And how deep did you have to go?
Yeah, but most of the trip, I would say we were in control, but we did. Ed struggled. I would say Sally and I, for most of the trip, we were in control. We did have some dark days. We did have some low days, particularly when Sally got quite a major head injury, and that was a dark through 3 days for her, and that has an impact on the rest of the team. I had a couple of dark days when I was really, really wanting us to do a certain number of miles, and we couldn't, because Ed was injured for quite a significant amount of the row. Ed had more dark days than anyone, I would say. He spent much of the row injured. He missed his son. He admitted, I don't think I'm talking out of turn here, he admitted that he was underprepared for the row, both physically and mentally, and his skills were not up to the standard of Sally and I. So that put a lot of pressure on Sally and I, to do the lion's share of the work. I'm not suggesting that Ed didn't give it his all. He did, but he was underprepared for this row, and I think he realised that. Maybe a third of the way across, maybe half the way. I don't recall the exact timing of it, but he actually admitted that this was the wrong timing for him. So Sally and I had to take on the lion's share of this row, and so we struggled some days, yeah. But it mainly the struggles came in mainly when there was injuries on board. I hurt my ribs. I crashed my ribs on the side of the cabin. Sally had the biggest injury of all, which was a cabin door slammed shut on her head, and she had concussion for 3 days. That was a slightly uncomfortable moment. We had to nurse her through that one, with blackouts and things. And Ed had quite a nasty injury to his ribs and his back and his shoulders, and it meant he couldn't row for a fair chunk of the time. In the last 2 days, he was on so many painkillers. He was so high on painkillers that he couldn't row. So the last 2 days was hard, because we knew we were so close. But Sally and I had to I would say the last week, maybe, we had a conversation with each other, and we decided we had to think as a pair. We couldn't rely on Ed to put in as much effort as we did, just because of his injuries, really.
Yeah, and you can't abandon him either, can you? Because
no.
it's your duty as a seafarer to take care of your other fellow seafarers. Yeah,
absolutely. So we had to put him on rest more than you would have done. There was occasions where I would send him to his cabin, because it was hindering my rowing. And one of the toughest decisions I had to make as a skipper was I had to hide the painkillers, because we had to last 59 days with 3 of us having an equal share of painkillers. And Ed, bless him, was rattling through them in the first 2 weeks. So I had to hide the drugs on board,
Yeah.
to make sure that he didn't. I had to put them in a separate place to make sure that he didn't take our drugs, because just in case we later on needed them, because it was too early on for us to be running low. And as it turns out, Sally needed them, and so did I. So that was a real tough decision, to watch somebody in pain, knowing that you've got ibuprofen and naproxen and various things on board and paracetamols, and go, sorry, you've had your quota. That was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you've adequately and beautifully described the euphoria and the razzmatazz that's attached with boats coming into harbour. So we can just imagine what that was like for you, and it must have been an incredible time. I'm interested to know what was the postscript like. So what were the immediate few days after arriving in port like, and then subsequently from there, what has that time been like for you and for your life?
So the post days after the row sort of balanced out the really troublesome days at the start of the row. And it was doing all those things for the first time, like having your first shower, your first beer, your first piece of fresh fruit, your first swim in the sea. It sounds odd, but Sally and I didn't swim in the sea for 60 days, despite the fact that we just rowed 3,200 miles. Ed was the one that was allocated to get out of the boat and clean the barnacles off. So we were craving a swim in the sea. Just watching him jump in was painful. Doing all the things for the first time was just amazing. Spending time with your family. Miles came out to greet me. Unfortunately, Robert wasn't able to. Paul was there. Sally's family were there. It was just amazing. So the very first thing I did when I got to land, after I'd said hello to all the family and given everyone a hug, was I had a swig of beer. So nice. We talked about beer constantly. It was every day, beer and fruit.
Yeah. And was there an inevitable hangover from the trip? Did you come down off the highs? What was that like? Was it difficult to manage that?
It was. For me, I can't speak. I think I can speak for Sally. I haven't spoken to Ed at great length about it, but Sally and I certainly found it hard to just go back into normal life. Normal daily duties. Just doing the washing and the ironing and loading the dishwasher. It all seemed so menial. And being in crowds and coffee shops I found really difficult, and one day I got really irritated, not with an individual but in myself. I was sat in a coffee shop and several people walked in this coffee shop and just left the door wide open, and I found myself getting so irritated at their lack of thought and the lack of attention to detail from human beings, which is not their fault, because you don't know what's going on in their heads. They didn't mean to leave that door open, probably, and you don't know what's going on in their heads at the time. But we had to run that boat like almost like a military organization. It's a military trip. Everything had to be done at the same time of day, in the same order, otherwise things slip and fail. And when we did let things slip, we lost ground. And we didn't run it as we should have run it as the tightest ship every day. And I guess we regret not doing that every day, but we would have got home quicker. But we still succeeded, and we've got no regrets in that regard, really. But getting back to normal life was hard, just readjusting to people and crowds and normal stuff. And the clutter around you, the stuff you don't need.
Get rid of it. Yeah.
I'm about to do that.
Good on you. I've got a good friend he's a retired sports person now, but he's got a couple of All-Ireland football medals, which is a huge thing here in Ireland. And anybody that has one is extraordinarily lucky to have one, and to have two of them is just immense,
Yeah.
I have asked him in the past, does his All-Ireland football medal, or do his All-Ireland football medals define him as a person? And it's the same question I have for you. Is this, or has this trip been the highlight of your life? And does it define you?
The highlight of my life, I would say, was having my children, for sure. That has to come first. It would definitely be up there with the next highlight of my life, and getting married last year, back in the last year, was also a highlight of my life. So that, that it's up there. I'm not going to isolate it as being the highlight, but it is one of the key top fives, I would say. And does it define me? I don't think so. I don't think so. It's certainly my story. It's not. It's always going to stay with me, isn't it? It's always going to. I'm always going to be Julie who rode the Atlantic, and there aren't that many people who've done it. It's like, I think something like 1,500 people have rode the Atlantic, and 15,000 people have climbed Everest. So it's. I like the fact that I have it as part of my life and my story. So I'm not sure if that defines me, but
are you using it? Are you using the learnings? Are you using the self-development that you gained as a result of it? Are you using it in any specific way for others, to help others, or have you any other endeavors that you are utilizing this experience for?
Yeah, I am. I'm using it personally in that I'm attempting to sort of declutter my life, as I've said. I will use it in terms of how I live my life going forward. I think everything, I think everything you do, I'm going to try and do everything right. I think I've spent too much time doing lots of things and maybe not doing them as well as I could have done. So I'm going to say no to more. And I'm going to focus more time on the things I want to do in life, and try and do them better than I have done in the past. So I think it will have an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that the experience doesn't define you, or won't define you. And I also suspect that it won't confine you either. I have a feeling that there might be another adventure or two in the offing.
Yeah, there will be. So the next adventure is for myself and Paul to row across the Atlantic. Row. I've already rowed it. Sail across the Atlantic. So we're going to sail probably at the start of next year, at end of this year, start of next year. We're gonna sail across from La Gomera again to Grenada. So that's the next adventure. And then obviously I'm going to tweak my work-life balance. Move down more, down the coaching route. So.
Yeah. When you meet people for the first time, Julie, how do you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as probably a little bit bonkers, so adventurous. So
hello, I'm a little bit
gritty.
bonkers. Nice to meet you.
Gritty.
Ah,
yeah.
Okay.
Gritty. Yeah.
And is that your message? Not that you have to have a message, but is that your message for people, anybody listening to the show, or anybody you meet outside of these confines? Is your message to keep going? Is that it?
Yeah, definitely. And also I would say don't wait for, my message is don't wait for retirement to do things. A lot of people wait for retirement. Do things, try and adjust your life and do things on the hoof. Try and massage your life so that you can do the things you want to do now. Don't wait. There's no point in waiting. Yeah, that's my message.
Well, Julie, I have to say, I didn't, even though your boat was rolling around there, I didn't suffer seasickness once in that discussion. And I learned a huge amount as well about you, and about life, and about seafaring, and about adventuring, and about that grittiness and determination that you spoke about.
Yeah.
And it's been a huge privilege and a huge enjoyment to listen to your story today and to chat with you. And I wish you well in all your future endeavors, and I'd love to catch up again sometime soon.
Oh, no, that's been great. Thank you very much for your time. That's been fantastic.
Great. Have a great day. What's on the cards for the rest of today?
We're just about to up the anchor and go over to Fuerteventura and anchor outside of a little port over there. I forget the name. Calero, I think it's called. Yeah. And then just travel around for a few days and then head back to the UK at the weekend.
Any chance you might finish that bottle of wine in the end?
Oh, we'll finish that tonight. So yeah, definitely.
Julie, thanks again.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much,
See ya.
Nikki.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Nikki Hughes Show. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with your friends. It really helps us to grow and reach more amazing people like you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to connect with us on social media or visit our website at nikkihughes.com. You can also follow the show's updates and get in touch with today's guest through our socials. Make sure to join us next week, where we'll be getting to know another legend from the world of business. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep uncovering the gold in everyday stories.